Dirty Scrap Podcast.
Thank you so much for making the time, for being here with us again in Dirty Scrap, the podcast where we try to dive into the sustainability trends, innovation of the aluminum industry. And I want to start this asking you, because I remember last time we were talking about the roadmap of the decarbonization of the industry, right? But right now we are seeing a lot of different, let's say, approach. How is this, let's say, roadmap is still available? Or when the new administration started, it is something that is going to be more flexible and we will have different approaches? Or how is the sustainable point of view of the aluminum industry right now?
That's a great question, Julio. And I guess I would answer it in two ways. First, when the industry comes together, and we convene over 70% of the United States industry when we meet as an association, and when the industry gets together and they define their long-term goals and their long-term objections, when they look at their opportunities and their threats, and they develop a plan, that plan should be durable.
Right.
And it is. And what I would say today is that as we look at our major four focuses as an association, they haven't changed. We've always had a major focus on strong and targeted trade enforcement for our industry to address the issues that we see in the world that are detrimental to American manufacturers. So to maintain close relationships with our trading partners, and that hasn't changed, and we will continue to do that. And obviously, that's a major focus right now. But when you look at the other three legs of our work, they're still there and they're still important. So increasing recycling, defining and pursuing our objectives for aluminum as a critical mineral, and then looking for future investment in the expansion of our industry. Those are really the four legs, the four pillars of the work we're doing as an industry, and we're going to continue to do that. But you're right, we are in a time of change, and as the current administration has taken the reins of the government in Washington, D.C., we've seen them move quickly and decisively, mainly in the trade arena for our industry. Pertaining to our industry,
right.
And we like some of what we see there, but we also have some concerns we have to deal with. So we will continue to navigate that space. And I think that when you look at our long-term goals as an industry, we can't throw everything out just because we're in a time of change. We have to stick to our principles, stick to our goals, and know what it will take to expand this industry into the future.
Right. So having said that, I know that around 80% of the aluminum that we are using in the United States is recyclable aluminum, right? But also I understand that with everything that is happening right now, recyclable is not anymore a must, but more like a lifestyle. So saying that, do you think the aluminum recycling rates are getting up? And we have these government policies pushing in that direction, or we will see more primary aluminum come into the industry and just having like a flat growing, if we can call it like that, on the recycling rates. What do you think is going to happen?
I know what's going to happen in the next few years, and that's that we're going to increase our recycling. We are going to increase. We're going to increase the reclamation of aluminum in this country from end uses, and we're going to increase the use of recycled aluminum in our metal supply. And the reason I know we're going to do that is because we have to do that, even to maintain that 80% percentage of recycled material as a feedstock. We're going to have to increase our recycling because we're going to increase the amount of metal being produced in the United States. And that 80% is going to have to grow. Even to stay 80%, it's going to have to grow. And we want to grow the percentage too. So we are working with the federal government, but we're also exploring all options in the policy world, in the technology world, to make sure that we're bringing back more metal and that we're better at using that metal when we do bring it back.
Right.
And so to get back to your original question, Julio, we have to meet this administration where it is when it comes to recycling aluminum. And we will change the way we talk about that issue. And so, for instance, as I just said, we're talking a lot more about metal supply and about the metal we're going to need to fill the furnaces that we have built with the investment in our industry, because this is industrial policy. It's very easy when you talk about recycling out in the world, in the context of other materials, for it to remain a sort of green and sustainable issue. And I personally believe in my heart that that's exactly what it is. But for our industry, it's other things. And those things are filling our furnaces with the metal that we need, because it is a preferred feedstock in our industry. And so we have to go get it, and we have to use it wisely when we have it.
Right. But this is a really good and critical point here. As you may know, part of my life is doing the podcast and trying to inform all the people, but also I have a commercial, let's say, approach where we sell different type of solutions for the aluminum recycling industry. But saying that, do you think it is going to be possible for us not just to increase the amount of metal that we will need to fill the furnaces, because at the end we will need more metal? I know that we are throwing a lot of metal to the landfills, but with this new administration, I am seeing a lot of flexibility. So I don't know if we are going to fight to have more metal into our furnaces or if we are going to the primary direction. But the problem here is how fast we can build this industry to grow, not just from the point of view of having more metal, but also from the point of view of growing the industry and adding more technology. It's not easy because it's going to take time, right?
It does. It does take some time, but it is moving quick. And there are a lot of technologies that are moving forward right now, especially in the sortation
Right.
world, as they come. Technologies that have matured really, but they haven't come up to scale yet. And there are market forces at play there. And some of the actions being taken by this administration will probably will drive the recycling industry, because as you know, the recycling industry follows the traded price of delivered
Right.
aluminum in the United States. And so those dollars may be there in a way that we haven't seen in the past. And so, yes, I think that we can move quickly. I think we have to move quickly. But I would agree with you, Julio. There are some still unknowns in that space still.
Right. What do you think is easier, seeing everything that we are seeing right now? It's easier to try to have more material into those furnaces that are already in place, because at the end, building a secondary aluminum facility is going to take 2 years at least, and a primary 8, 10 probably. So which direction we should take? I think we need to work on both directions, right? More metal into the furnaces and creating more facilities, more jobs. We will talk about jobs because it's not easy here in the US, but also, what do you think is going to be the first step that we need to take in order to go in the direction that we want to go? More metal, and where that metal are coming from? Or that's a really
Mhm.
good question, because right now with all the tariff, Canada is, I don't know. So what do you think about it? Which direction we should take? And talking about the tariff already and the policies, what is your position and what is the challenges that we will face?
Well, there's several lines of reasoning to unpack there, Julio. I would start by saying it is absolutely true, because we've had these conversations, that this administration is very interested in reopening smelters
Right.
in the United States. And look, we're excited about that. We want to have that conversation with this administration, and we think it's a very worthy conversation to have. And the industry's role, our association's role especially, is to give this administration a really clear-eyed view of what it's going to take and how long it's going to take to open a
Exactly.
smelter. And so it does no one any good to underestimate the challenge in front of us in the smelting world.
Mhm.
The United States of today is not in the same place that it has been in the past when we opened smelters. We do not have vast amounts of stranded electricity co-located with hydroelectric power in locations around our country. It's just not the case. And so we don't have an overabundance at the moment of electricity. Now, I believe that Americans can do anything we put our minds to do. And so we will be happy to talk to this administration, and we have been happy to talk to this administration about the specific electricity needs and the line of sight for 20 years into the future for those electricity commitments that it will take to bring a smelter online in the United States. And it's a great
Right.
conversation, because, yes, America can do that. I
Definitely.
look forward to seeing it happen. But it's something that we have to bring to this administration, and it's not a problem our industry can solve. So we've had that conversation. And if we get those commitments, and if we see that movement into the future of an electricity landscape that is favorable to an internationally competitive smelter, then we have to have the time to execute on that. So those are the conversations in the primary world that we are having, very clear-eyed, very matter-of-fact, pen to paper, here's the numbers. And we want to talk with this administration because they've said they are committed to doing these things. So we'll have that conversation. At the same time, it's important to talk about metal units. And we can get metal units in two ways. We can build more smelting, or we can increase our recycling. And I want to go back and say we need to take that "or" out of that sentence, because the answer is absolutely "and." We have to do both. We have to do both for multiple reasons. First, we're going to need all the metal we can get to satisfy the demand we're seeing in the future, and it's going to take both. And in the time frame we have, some of those options are easier than others in the short term. And some of those are long-term goals for this administration. When you look in the international world, in the last few months, the tariff landscape has become uncertain. And uncertainty is not good for business. And we have scrap right here, and we have it right now. And so there are things the United States can do today to decrease our dependence on imported primary aluminum, to build up our primary aluminum. But in the short term, we'll have to recycle more if we want to do that. Now, finally, I would say that we know what is driving the use of our material in downstream products. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite in the same line of sight that it was a year ago, but it's still true that sustainability drives aluminum use in all of our major markets. We are a preferred alternative in all of our major markets because we are providing lower carbon solutions.
Right.
And I think that the smart investments in our industry will continue to be the investments in a low carbon future for our industry, because that's where we're being used in our markets.
Right. Talking about the tariff and the medium or short, medium and long term, let's say, adaptability that we will need in order to reach the goals that we want to reach. For example, on the aluminum billet side, I know that demand on billets is around 7 million tons a year, but we are just producing around 700 to 900,000 tons in the United States. And 70%, I will say 70, 75% of the aluminum billets that we are using in the US are coming from Canada, but we are just pushing the button very hard on Canada on the 25, even 50% tariff. How we can manage that if we are not able or to put that value on the end user, because at the end user will be like hit by this tariff. So how we can manage that and how we can speed up the manufacturing here in the US in the short term, because at the end, long term sounds really good, but it's long term. And the administration will end in 4 years. So maybe we will go back to the sustainability and recycling processes getting more and more important than just bringing aluminum to the industry. So what do you think about it?
Well, first, I think that we have to be really clear about our medium and long-term goals, because in the short term, there's going to be turbulence in the market. Because we have an American president right now who is deploying very quickly a tariff regime that we have not seen in this country in several generations. And they have been consistent in their messaging that their long-term goals are to use these tools, not their short-term goals. And so in the very short term, we need to keep a clear eye on where we want to go into the future, because in the very short term, it's not going to be achieved. Now, I think that we will be able to achieve the goals that this industry needs, because we have seen in the past, this president has taken the actions we needed in the past during his first term to maintain access to our upstream feedstocks. And we have confidence that he will do so again. And what that means for us today is that the great deal we're getting with Canada is a great deal we're looking for in the future. Access to Canadian primary has been a good deal for U.S. producers. And we are continuing to discuss that with this administration. We also have to look at a world in which not just the United States, but many actors are taking a more nationalist approach to their trade policy. And that has impacts outside of even primary production and trade. We've got to look at our feedstocks and where our scrap is coming from and where it is going to. And as an industry, we have to keep an eye on all of those balls in order to be successful into the future. Our message to the administration has been, we are structurally constrained to produce more primary smelters. But even if that's going to happen between now and then, we will be a metal deficit economy. If we're not a metal deficit economy, then we failed as an industry, because we're expanding that quickly and we've built these furnaces and something has to go in them.
Definitely. What are those policies that are impacting the most the aluminum industry right now, and how those policies will impact in the short and medium term the industry? What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, of course, there's the acute tariff policies that we've been talking about. Our industry is very focused on the Section 232 steel and aluminum tariffs. We've seen this tariff policy to be a durable policy. It was enacted in President Trump's first term, and now it's being modified in his second term. So we believe that this will be durable policy into the future, and we need to make, and while we support many provisions of the policy, for instance, the derivative product provisions, the smelting cast provisions for North America, there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Definitely.
But the flat approach to applications, specifically as it affects Canada, is something we're laser focused on right now. So we'll be looking for solutions for the industry. Then you look beyond the Section 232 tariffs, and there are many of this administration's other tariff policies that they have discussed, or they are studying, or they have enacted and suspended, they can also affect our industry, and they can affect
Right.
our industry as stacked tariffs. So we are active in those spaces. We believe that there's a lot of uncertainty here and that we don't yet know what this administration's mature and long-term tariff environment will be.
Right.
So until we know that, we need to be careful about how we intervene. But as a top-line item, we are speaking persistently and consistently that a carve-out for Canada is going to be required from any and all of these tariff rafts if they are enacted.
Right. What about Russia? What do you think about it? Because I think in some point, because I remember this company Rusal, and before the war between Russia and Ukraine, we used to have a lot of aluminum coming out of Russia into the U.S. It's a cheap way to find good aluminum. It's very cheap compared to Canada. Obviously, China, I think, is not something that we want to explore. I think at least right now, but Russia, I am seeing a really good option for the US, and I think Trump is willing to work with Putin in some point. Do you think that that can be an option for us instead of relying on Canada, start dealing more with Russia and having more, let's say, high quality, cheap aluminum while we are building the industry to go and on the numbers that we want to go?
Well, so before we get to where the industry might be on this issue, it's important to note right up front that the industry's position has been that the Russia-Ukraine war is much, much bigger than our industry.
Definitely.
And our position since the beginning of the Ukraine crisis has been that we will take any and all actions that the U.S. government and our allies deem necessary to address the crisis. That has meant that we neither support nor oppose sanctions or the 200% tariff or any actions the government takes, because it's about us supporting a war.
Right.
And so in a time of war, when the government says that actions must be taken economically, we will follow. And we have consistently said that. And I believe that we will maintain that position into the future. Now, when it comes to Russia as an industrial impactor on our industry, there's a long story there. Look, going all the way back to 2017, 16 and 17, we used to import about 16%, up to at the high water mark, 16% of our primary imports came from Russia.
Right.
Now, there were a set of sanctions in 2017 that impacted Russian oligarchs, and that did impact the Russian supply of primary metal in the world. And so since then, the U.S. industry has diversified a lot. And so on the eve of the Ukrainian war invasion, only about, I believe, 4%. I'll have to check that number for you, Julio. I know it was less than 5%. It was 3 or 4% of U.S. Primary supply was coming from Russia. So it was a very small amount.
Right.
And now it's gone at this. So yes, we've heard both the administration and Vladimir Putin make statements about Russia's aluminum production. And we'll have to see where that goes into the future, because first and foremost, we still consider this a war effort and something that the industry will have to treat in that manner.
Right. Right. What are the innovations that we will see in this industry? What do you think about it? Because last year we were talking about closed loop systems and, everything that is related to take the energy and take advantage of the energy that we are creating into the process, but also reduction of the CO2. That means that we need to approach in certain way to the technology. But right now that we are having all this flexibility, what do you think is going to be the innovation? Just more on the sorting and segregation lines? Or what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, starting with the upstream, we're still excited that nanotechnology is being explored and commercialized first here in North America. Cementing to me the fact that North America has been the major innovation region for our industry throughout this metals history, something I'm very proud of personally as I here at the Aluminum Association. So there's still inert anode being explored and commercialized here in North America, and that will be a structural change to our industry going forward as it moves forward. Then there are some trends in our industry that are still durable across administrations. I think the last time you and I got to speak, Julio, I talked a good bit about the energy portfolio diversification that we're seeing in our facilities. That's throughout our industry. So we can look at that as a furnace fuel technologies, from the use of hydrogen as an additive fuel source to electric arc furnaces and so forth. There's just a lot going on in the furnace in our processing
Right.
for our furnaces. But then more broadly, just looking at the energy that's going into our plants, there's a lot of diversification going on there. The Inflation Reduction Act investments under the previous administration were focused very much on green technologies and
Hmm.
greening our energy grid and our energy sources. That's not going away. We may not see it move at the pace that we saw it moving in the last administration, but I don't think that anyone is going to abandon those processes because really we do need energy portfolio diversification and we need it for multiple reasons. And some of that diversification will be green sources, wind, solar, and so forth. But we're going to see more and more interesting uses of natural gas, of other gases, including hydrogen, nuclear. There more states are exploring nuclear options than at any other time
Oh,
in
really?
this country's history. Yes, we're seeing. Had some very interesting conversations with the Nuclear Association at our last meeting. Happy to follow up with you on that. It's a really, really exciting
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
area. So across the board, energy diversification is something that in our industry, and then you get as we go further and further down the supply chain, absolutely in the material sorting space and in the MRF efficiency space, the municipal recycling facilities, we lose metal there. We know we lose
Definitely.
metal at the MRF, and that technology is evolving quickly. And that's not necessarily the sortation technology we're talking about as an industry when we bring up sortation, because we're talking about alloy family sortation and contaminant sortation and so forth. But just making sure that we segregate post-consumer scrap at the MRF is a significant amount of volume that we've got to make sure that we're focused on. Also at the MRF, there have been some huge, this was something that happened while I was away from the industry. We went from an industry that was not recycling a large fraction of flexible foil to an industry that is now bringing back a major fraction of that material. Now, there's a lot more to do in that space, and I think we will do it.
Right.
So lots and lots going on. We get so laser focused, I think, on how we sort at our facilities, and we should, because we need to focus inside our fence line. But there's a wider world out there where our material is coming from, and we have to also stay focused on that. I'm really excited too that, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, Julio. Our one of our major policy focuses at the association remains the policy aimed at American recycling, consumer recycling. And it's unfortunate for me to say it today, but it is still broken. It is still absolutely broken, and we have to do something about that. It's offensive to me that we can say that people have access to recycling if they have one drop-off location in their county. That's not access to recycling.
No.
And as a country, we need to do better than that. And so we're working hard both at the state level and at the federal level to get legislation passed that will first shore up, but then improve the recycling landscape for the entire country.
But how can you implement that in order to help the society to understand very well that this is something that we really need in order to reach those goals? So what is the action plan here?
You know, that's a very meaty question you just asked
No.
because consumer preferences for recycling and recycling solutions has changed just in the last generation. And
Right.
so what motivates someone in their household to recycle that's a complex question. And we've known for some time that it is complex, but more recently we've seen that it changes quickly. And so I think the reason that someone is motivated to put an aluminum can into a recycling bin today is very different from what it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years ago, I think people would have been motivated by material diversion from landfill and by a general don't litter kind of mentality.
Right.
Today, marine biology is driving people's motivation to use and recycle aluminum cans. And there is some nascent understanding in the general public that this metal is going right back into industrial uses. And so people are starting to get it. And we have to talk about that more loudly and more forcefully because there is a difference in recycling different materials. There are very different economics involved. There are certain materials for which there's a water line below which it's really not economically feasible to recycle the material, but we'll do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. That line doesn't exist for aluminum. There is no last unit that is not desirable in the recycling world. every unit is desirable and we want every one of them. And so getting that message out there, and look, we have, because when consumer preferences for packaging material are driven by sustainable choices, then they're getting. We can do more, but I'd like to, not everything is failing here. The industry is doing a good
Right.
job of getting this message out to end users.
Right. I am 100% agree with you, and this is one of the reasons that we are promoting the podcast, because actually we want to get this information into the people, for the people to understand what's going on and how important it is to do it. But also, with all the tariffs that we are seeing right now, I know for a fact that some of the biggest players in the industry, like Coca-Cola, they will start putting more plastic bottles into the market instead to going into aluminum can. It is possible that we will see something like that, and how that will impact the recycling rate, for example. I know it's not an easy question, but what do you think
Well,
about it?
I don't want to put too many words in our customers' mouths. And so it's important and I hope you do reach out to those customers in the automotive world, in the packaging world, in the building and construction world, and find out firsthand from them what kind of material choices are going to be driven by these tariff policies. I will
Right.
tune in. I will tune in for that podcast. I very much want to hear those answers. Now, what we're seeing, though, as an industry is that first, it's important to acknowledge that aluminum is more tariff exposed than some of our competing materials. Not all of them, but at least some of them.
Why? Why is that?
Because, well, first and foremost, because our upstream, we are in metal deficit. And so we do have to import aluminum in the upstream. Now, when I say that, too often that lands with the general public as the whole aluminum industry is outside of the United States. Absolutely untrue.
Right.
As a matter of fact, if we opened every smelter today in the United States that we need to service our demand, that would be about, at most, 8 to 10,000 jobs. In the meantime, the industry is 164,000 jobs. And so it's not that's not where the industry is.
Nope.
The industry is our rolling mills, our extrusion plants, our cutting and slitting. And that's just within the boundaries of what I consider my membership, for the foraging facilities and so on and so forth. Outside of our facility, it's 700,000 jobs. That's the machinists, the metal service centers, the recycling facilities, 700,000 jobs against 8,000 smelting jobs. So that's a really important thing to think about. But getting back to your question about why we are more tariff exposed, that small number of employment does drive our smelters outside of the country right now, mostly in Canada. And that metal is what we have to have for all of those downstream jobs to be successful. Right. Now, in the material world, when we look across materials, there are just some materials that are a little bit more domestically oriented. The petrochemical supply chain for plastic is a relatively short supply chain. Yeah. And we domestically pump and drill for petrochemical feedstocks, which is not to say that we aren't dependent on some feedstock in that industry from Canada. Right. But so I could go across the materials, but we have done that analysis and we know that aluminum is a bit more tariff exposed. Not a big deal, but something that we do have to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. Then when you look at the impact of tariffs, at what point can that exposure drive a material substitution in any application? Material substitution, good engineers should be looking at material substitution all the time, because Definitely. You can't be, we're coming from a world that designed, for instance, in the building and construction world, we're coming from a world that designed in brick, concrete, and wood. We used to hear that all the time. That's what people were taught in school. Right. That's what you design. And we turned the corner there. We got the aluminum design manual out in the world, and we got people to start thinking about designing in aluminum. And you see the results today all around you. But part of that discussion is about what material is the best for every application. That question has driven the use of a lot of aluminum. We're a young metal, and we're still substituted every day as a more highly engineered preferred material for legacy applications or material uses and applications. But that trend can turn in the other direction. And so we're still watching that. I personally, there will always be uses for aluminum. Mm-hmm. Aluminum is the Definitely. Magic metal for a reason. And so I think there's a big question mark right now on what this eventual tariff landscape is going to look like and what impact it has on the market, and then what impact it has on the real world of materials in building and design. Right.
Talking about labor, because with all the policies that we have right now with the new administration, that even though I am an immigrant, I am 100% agree that we need to control the illegal immigration here, because at the end it's an issue and it's complicated. And I am in favor that people come here like me to make to make a better life, but also you need to contribute to your country. At the end, it is what it is. Now, this is my country right now, right? I'm living here, and I want to improve my country society, because in that direction I will have a better quality lifestyle. Saying that, I know the not just the aluminum industry, but the entire industry in the United States is reliant on a lot of immigrants right now. And what do you think is going to happen with the labor if we start growing in the direction of building more facilities, but not having this cheap labor, but it is what it is at the end, right? And what do you think about it? Because at the end, United States is, and this is a really good book for the people that is seeing us. The name of the book is The Profit Paradox, and talks about the profiles that we are creating in oh, can you hear me? Okay, we are back.
Yes.
The name of the book is The Profit Paradox, and this book talks about how United States profiles are going in the direction that we want to be, like the super CEOs and the new stars. That is not the athletes or the athletic people or the artists. Right now is the CEOs like Elon Musk and all these guys. But we are lacking of this labor profile. What do you think about is going to happen if we start growing the industry and making more facilities, but we don't have this labor that is helping the facilities to grow?
Well, so first, the aluminum industry is very concerned about the future labor force of the United States. America has a great labor force, but it is absolutely true that it has been tight for some time. And as we look into the future, our analysis tells us that that's not going to change in the near or medium term. And as an industry, as a growing industry, especially, that is something that concerns us. Also, as an industry, we're very proud of the work environment that we provide as an industry to the people who come to us to work here. We've got long tenure in our industry. People come to us and stay with us. We've also benchmarked our salary profile, and we pay more than other American manufacturing sectors. And so we know that we can attract and retain the talent that we need into the future. But there are some real questions about what that talent looks like. Now, I don't have, and we don't have as an industry, a specific position on immigration policy, which is where you started, Julio. But we have been clear that we have measured the fact that our workforce is diversified. There's more minorities working in our plants. There are more women working in our plants. There is more age diversification in our plants. We know that, and we want to be sensitive to that. This is not a DEI issue. That's simply reporting the reality of the world that we're living. That's what's happening with the workforce. And if we don't acknowledge, and it will either happen without intention or it will happen with intention. And I firmly believe it must happen with intention. Now, we have advocated to the federal government that we need strong and durable and effective labor policy as a country, or we simply won't be effective. For this administration, we can't advocate to repatriate manufacturing without having the workers to work the plants. And we have seen positive steps in that direction by the previous administration and by this administration. And the good thing I can say about labor policy or employment policy and policies that affect the U.S. workforce is that they are durable across party lines. And so there's strong bipartisan support to be effective in this area. Now, what that will mean for this administration's specific policies that you referred to, I don't know. And I would say that our association has not taken a position there, but we are watching this closely.
Right. Yeah. Taking a position is not easy because it's at the end of the day, I think what we will need to do is try to keep everything just moving forward in the best way, right? What is the future on the Aluminum Association? Or what is the future vision of the Aluminum Association for the short and medium term? What are your position right now?
Well, first and foremost, the United States is still the best place in the world to make and produce with aluminum, and we want to maintain. There are challenges ahead. We will address them. Our vision for the aluminum industry of the future in the United States is that we continue to grow. That we continue to provide the best technology and the most advanced products that our metal and our industry can produce. And we believe that we are well on track to do that. We do want to expand recycling in North America and the use of recycled material in North America. And with that said, we will always need primary material. And we want to maintain access to that material. And if that means growing production of it domestically, we are on board with that 100%. And we will need to maintain our valued trading partners into the future as long as we are not smelting that metal. We can succeed in North America because we are succeeding. We know it. We've invested more in the last 5 years than we have in 2 generations. So we just want to keep going as we are and to continue to succeed into the.
I am very happy with what you're saying, and I am 100% agree with you that America is a country that you always think is going to go through a rush hour, but it doesn't. We always go in, we always have something that allowed us to step forward. And that's what I really like about this country. Final question is, what are the industries that you think is going to push more the aluminum industry? Because last year was the EVs, but we are seeing that the EVs is not the industry that is getting more strong and strong through the years. What do you think is going to be the industry that will push more the aluminum?
Great question. Well, I would say as I began this interview, I would end it. The fundamentals haven't changed. When we assess the demand profile especially in the packaging sector and the automotive sector, the growth profile and the curve has not changed. Some specifics within the curve probably have changed. We have seen that the adoption of EVs has slowed from initial projections, but it is still very much positive. It's still, honestly, on any metric, it's still going like gangbusters. And so our overall assessment of the automotive sector is that there may be a blip here that was a little unexpected, but the overall growth profile has not changed. Americans are going to drive cars, and those cars are going to be made of aluminum. And I would say the same about the packaging sector. The turn that we have seen, we can talk a lot about material substitution, but ultimately, the turn that we saw in the increased use of aluminum in the packaging sector, it was because consumer hands were reaching into shelves and refrigerators in retail and picking up aluminum. And that's what drove the move to aluminum. And we have seen nothing to suggest that that is going to change.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Chuck, appreciated your time. Really, really appreciate it. I think this episode was very insightful. And definitely, I think we will see more changes. But at the end, we need to have the capacity to be flexible to all of those changes, but also we need to be aware that we need to keep moving in the direction that we've been working for the last 10 years. Because at the end, for me, recycling and primary aluminum is an industry that we need to understand that we need to merge together more and more to get into those volumes, those goals, those labors, those facilities, and those circular economy approaches. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I think that's it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julio. It's been great to be here. And Julio, let me just say before we sign off that I think what you're doing is really important. We really appreciate it. And it's consequential, not just for our industry, but for the country, for this, it may not always be the most exciting topic. I think it is, but this information needs to be out there in the world. So thank you very much for the work you're doing.
Oh, no, my pleasure. For me, it's just, having something that allow me to put into the society that is giving me too much to give something back.
Dirty Scrap Podcast.